We're just going to start with an invocation or thought by Commissioner Webb. But he is not quite here yet. So Commissioner Neighbor, would you mind giving us
The thought?
Thanks.
Sure. Am I up?
Please.
The thought, I wasn't prepared, but I guess we are in the season a little bit coming up in July of patriotism. So how can you not comment on that a little bit? So well, the world sometimes feels so screwed up, doesn't it? But we live in the greatest country in the world. And when you step back and look at the things that we have and the history that we have, clearly some of the obstacles we see can always be overcome. It's just sometimes we get in some weird funk going on a little bit. But I would say my patriotism to the United States of America has always been there. And that's one thing I value, the life, liberty, and justice that we're all guaranteed. What a wonderful thing. And being part of a governmental entity like the Planning Commission, where you can give back to your community a little bit, that's an honorable thing too. So that's my statement, being a little bit unprepared.
No, thank you. That was great.
Okay.
Putting you on the spot.
Thank you.
Lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Absolutely. If you'll please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got two commissioners who are excused tonight, Commissioner Watson and Commissioner Gardner. So we'll go ahead and we've got the five of us remaining. Commissioner Webb is online. So the first item on the consent agenda is consideration and action to approve the June 4th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at those? Are there any changes?
Seeing no changes and having reviewed those, I would move that we approve the June 4th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This commission meeting minutes are passed. Any ex parte communications or conflict of interest to disclose tonight? Since we do have some members of the public here tonight, I'd just like to read a brief statement about public comments during the meeting. Time is made available for anyone in the audience to address the commission concerning matters pertaining to city business. Citizens will be asked to limit their remarks or questions to 5 minutes each. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, such as pictures or written materials, are part of the record and must be left with the commission. Speakers are required to have signed in at the door and will state their name and city residing before beginning their remarks. If you agree with the previous speaker, state your agreement to avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium or microphone and shall address all comments to the Planning Commission. So at this time, are there any public comments for items that are not on our agenda tonight? We will allow time during those agenda items later, but if there's something outside of the agenda, I would welcome you to come up. Anyone online, John?
Just Commissioner Webb and Lauren Gardner are online, or Commissioner Gardner.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and start with the administrative item, number 5. Consideration and action regarding an administrative application, the preliminary plat approval of Northview Estates, Phase 10, which is 37 lots, located at approximately 4100 North, 600 East. And our presenter tonight is Scott Hess.
Thank you, Chair. We do have applicant representative with us tonight. So Cecil Satterthwaite has made application. This subdivision application, if you'd noticed, was made back in 2024. There was work done between staff and the developer to consider some of the cul-de-sac lengths and then also easement locations versus parcels that will be owned by North Ogden, specifically for maintenance of future improvements and underground utilities there. With this, you have 37 lots. If you've been up on the hill lately above Mountain Road, you've seen significant development that they've been doing. So this is what I'd call like a really good new prototype for how to do the subdivisions on the hill, because they're installing all of the retaining walls first as part of that and leveling the lots, and then they'll sell them essentially as kind of done flat lots or to some degree, and then there won't be a mix and match of different retaining walls. And we're getting a really good product up there, I think, from a staff standpoint. So there's been a lot of back end engineering and review of this as it's moved forward to the process, but the preliminary plat's now ready to be reviewed. The improvements will continue to get done, and then final plats are reviewed and approved administratively. In this one, we did, because there's a number of, you got 2 cul-de-sacs and some curves. Staff did go through and make sure all of the frontage requirements are being met in the frontage widths. We measure those at the front yard setback, so 30 feet back, if you were interested in how like the curve length of those radiuses are measured. We have no concerns on any of those, and we have standard conditions of meeting requirements of the technical review committee memo, the staff report, engineering report. There is, when you read the owner's dedication, and this isn't a real big deal for preliminary plat approval tonight, but there's a reference to parcels that don't exist. I think it's EFG, and it might be a holdover from previous owner's dedication where they've changed parcels to easements, but we just want to make sure that the amend the preliminary plat to confirm that all dedicated property is correctly reflected in the owner's dedication and the notes section. And that's one that I'm going to leave. I won't leave the specifics in there, but we just want to make sure the owner's dedication is corrected. And then prior to final plat, one of the things we would like to see on hillside lots like this is show a setback building box on each lot to confirm a buildable location is feasible. And I'm slightly less concerned on this one because of the nature of the retaining walls, but we have had a few subdivisions move forward where the after the fact building box for the actual house on the ground is very constrained or impacted by retaining walls or something else that we really weren't they weren't considered at like the 30,000 foot view level. So before final plat, we'd like to see that. With that description, staff recommends that preliminary plat approval of the Northview Estates Phase 10 subdivision be granted, subject to the conditions from the engineer's report, the technical review committee memo, and conditions noted in the staff report. And I'll take any questions.
On the building footprint, you had a condition of a recommendation for condition of approval that the planning commission grant that approval permission to the staff. I just wanted to note that in there. We probably should include that in any motion that we make.
And with that, it's worth noting that state code a few years ago mentioned that no substantive changes to the code could be made and impact previously approved subdivisions for 10 years. So there was a short window, like 2022, 23, and into the beginning of 24, where we were requiring all building boxes to be shown on plats. And the reason for that is that we'd have a date stamp on the plat and then know that for 10 years, if the HP1 zone or HP2 or any of the zones were to change, we couldn't roll back on those developers or those home builders and say, you now must conform to X new standard, right? It held that standard. That state code was rescinded or amended. So this it's not a codified requirement. It's more like we'd love to see it, and they can do it a few different ways. If they want to show us a plan and profile and that a flat spot on the lots exists, that's fine as like a cut sheet. If they want to just put them on the plat themselves as the setback distances, they can. Some of these lots, they may exceed the 10% slope, so they'd get this front yard setback reduction that's permitted by code. So it's more of a guarantee for the developer than the city. You know,
It wasn't because you were concerned that there wasn't a buildable area.
No,
Some of these lots.
it's more just as you start marching up the hillside and you cross some of these gullies, there become some weird steep lots on, with side hill on them. But this one I'm generally less concerned about, but the elevation gain from Mountain Road up to Sundial is significant. And so it's worth seeing on all those side hill lots that we do have a flat buildable box area.
Does anybody have any other question? At this time,
We're seeing receipts. Is that unusual to see the receipts for payments?
No, so what constitutes a complete application for us or before we're moving forward is the application and the payment. So
Okay.
there might be information on there that we should redact. I don't think so, but really it's just confirmation that the applicant paid the fees and that is what's moved the
Just
application
more
forward to you.
evidence of the whole project, I
Yeah.
guess.
It's more, it guarantees on our side that we made sure they paid the fees. I think that's what it's helpful for us to have it.
Okay. The accountant's asking the question, so
that's
you know
good.
that.
at this time, we would like to invite the applicant to come up. Good evening, sir.
Evening, thank you. Cecil Satterthwaite, representing the developers. And we've worked with Scott and Eric and your staff. They're awesome and going through this. We had our TRC meeting last year and working through the things like Scott said, we shortened the cul-de-sac. And we're going to do these, we're going to keep doing these block walls. We're going to terrace. And Scott mentioned to put the building envelopes on the plat. I think that's a good idea. So we'll have our engineers do that so that, it gets the setbacks and so there's no confusion there. So we're working hard.
Any other concerns about the conditions of approval that were laid?
No, we don't.
Quite a few.
Yeah, continue to work with staff and they bring up questions and we try and solve them together. We have a good relationship. So
And
I
then just
appreciate all
out of
that.
curiosity, I think it's really interesting, this concept that the retaining walls are going to be built first and they're all uniformed. How did that come about? Was that just,
Well, this is phase 10, so and what has happened before is it's on the hillside and we sell the lots and have all the improvements in and it's like we sell it to home builders or contractors. And then the last thing they do is put in the retaining walls, might be the end of the money, so we've thought this way and we've got drainage under there. I just think it's a better way to terrace it. Because we've had troubles with that in the past, like Northview 7 and John knows this and Scott does. Not big, but with drainage and stuff like that. So it costs us a lot more money, but I think as we work up this hillside, I think it's a pretty cleaner way to do it.
yeah,
And the builders love it too.
yeah, and I'm really
Every-
excited about it as an idea. I think it's a great concept for building up the mountain. So
Yes.
yeah, that's awesome.
So we're going to keep that going.
Yeah, thank you.
Scott, was that the city's suggestion or just the builders?
It's
Well,
just
compliments
the
too.
builders
Yeah.
and we've seen in high water years, we've seen like disparate retaining wall designs, one fail and the one next to it not, or you've got a really tall, flat backyard on one and then a tapered backyard on the other. So it's certainly a cost by the developer. It isn't a requirement by the city, but I think those home buyers who will buy those lots will appreciate the value in that
Yeah.
that wall.
And
that wall.
our goal is to make nice lots and
Yeah.
get them.
Are you
Ready to
local
go?
Do you represent local contractors generally?
Well, we sell to contractors, but yeah, mostly local.
Development company.
There's a handful. Tell you all the names, but
Mhm.
Local.
and individuals, but yes.
Okay, good.
John, did you see Commissioner Gardner was online? He had sent a couple of concerns and I just wanted to make sure that he didn't have those questions or I could ask them for him from his email.
So he's as a panelist, so he should be able to unmute himself and ask those questions if.
Commissioner Gardner, can you unmute and respond?
Yes. Yes, I can. I got a lot of my answers addressed by Eric Casperson, the city engineer, regarding the easement issues that I brought up. The one question I had that he didn't address was regarding snow storage areas, especially in the cul-de-sacs. If that's been looked at and addressed so that we can make sure the driveways and the snow storage areas are sufficient?
So those are not shown right now in the cul-de-sacs on the preliminary plat. On final plats, we typically identify a snow storage area. And then what happens is the home builders, they come in and they'll stagger their driveways. So two driveways hover on a property line, and then it leaves a significant open area, and then you reverse the driveway on the other side. So those snow storage areas become a sort of public easement within the cul-de-sac bulb. And those have been effective for identifying where snow will be stored. As to whether or not the parks employee who's driving the snowplow truck on that morning or evening of the snowstorm puts that snow in exactly that location, doesn't always happen, but it's a really good warning or preparation for those home buyers in the cul-de-sac lots that there will be snow here. And interesting, and
I
Lauren,
just know as we go up the hill, we have more snow. And so we need actually more room to store that snow.
yeah, there's a doubling effect on the snow that's really interesting. So from 2,600 to 3,100, and then 3,100 to Mountain Road, and then Mountain Road up. So if you get like 3 inches, it's 6, and then a foot, and then almost 2 feet near the top of the cove. So
Oh, yeah.
it's very
see it.
significant above 3,100 north.
And I may, Lauren, like our first plan, we wanted the longer cul-de-sac on that upper end, and that was one of the reasons that we had to shorten that up, is it would be more snow storage. So I think we've got enough room in there, and plus there's 10-foot PUE on each side and around the cul-de-sacs as well. It does get a lot of snow up there, but the one thing, it does melt quicker, but I understand that concern. So we'll help however we need to design that right.
All right, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions for the applicant? Not, I would entertain a motion.
Going back to the report.
Does anybody have any objection to this in general? I think I'd go ahead and make a motion that the preliminary plat approval of the Northview Estates Phase 10 subdivision, subject to the conditions in the engineer's report, the technical review committee memo, and the conditions noted in the staff report are be approved. The one thing I would add to that is trying to find it in the conditions of approval, but the final plat that shows the building footprints. Just make sure I have the wording right, to that be shown on the final plat, and it's recommended that approval be delegated to staff for approval.
Scott, that is not in your recommendations, the piece that,
It's not, you can change those. So those are just our staff recommended conditions of approval, but you can change that. So you can say that be delegated to staff, or nix that one, or we're going to figure it out at the planning commission meeting. So yep,
and you're supportive of that
Sure.
addition? Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe we can restate it, like listing these, and then with this one, just adding like, and subject to the staff report, just so that it's unless.
The only
felt
one
like we
the only one I'm
capture that.
concerned about is only one and
Yeah,
I'm
that.
not even seeing it in the condition of approval. It's
So
not
you
jumping.
make it-
But I just want, in the staff report, there is a paragraph that talks about requiring these building footprints to be shown on the plat.
Mm.
It's only that specific part that I would want to add.
Yeah.
So maybe I can rephrase this a little bit. Let me try to, I kind of rambled through that. So I recommend that the approval of the preliminary plat of the Northview Estates Phase 10 subdivision, subject to the conditions from the engineer's report, the technical review committee memo, and the conditions noted in the staff report. Additionally, the required building footprints need to be shown on the plat, and it's recommended that the planning commission grant that permission to staff to administer. That's my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and do a vote. Commissioner Bailey,
Aye.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Or yes.
Approve, yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
and Commissioner Webb.
Yes.
So that's unanimous approval. So let's go ahead and move on to the next item. And that would be consideration and action regarding an administrative application, the preliminary plat approval of Orchard Bend at North Ogden, Phase 1 Townhomes, 49 lots, which is located at approximately 1661 North Washington Boulevard. And that will be presented by Ryan Nunn.
Thank you, commissioners. So this item for the preliminary plat approval is accompanied by the applicant is West States. The property is really is several parcels. This first phase is focusing on the west side where 150 East will be built and come through. The applicant has previously completed an annexation through the city council that was also accompanied by a development agreement. And they received the R4 zone for the multifamily. This first phase of 49 townhomes with the development agreement are all for sale units. And will be under an HOA. We held a TRC previously, and we also have our city engineer memo and a geotech that came along with this application. When we review these subdivisions for the multifamily, we rely on the 1113, Title 1113, which is the PUD and attached dwelling units. They're meeting those standards of meeting the minimum lot size for the townhomes. Based on its development agreement where they were allowed to build a total of 315 units. This first phase also indicates a parcel D where 150 angles away from their property line. It was told to staff that they might consider dedicating that to the city. Through the staff's discussion, we recommend city does not take the parcel and let it remain with the property and be managed by HOA. So for the preliminary plat, staff is supportive of the 49 lots, of placement of 150, all with it's meeting the development agreement that was previously approved in the annexation, with the conditions that it meets our TRC memo, engineering memo, and the staff report, with also the condition that city does not consider taking on the dedication of that parcel D. I'm happy to help answer any questions, but we also have the site plan as well as our second item that'll go in a little bit more.
Kind of hand in hand.
Yeah.
One condition of approval you didn't mention was building permits will not be issued until approval of the final subdivision plat. That's normal, yes?
Yeah, that's a condition we're looking to add with these multifamily developments, is that we have that final plat approval and it's recorded before we'll issue any building permits.
Thanks. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Nunn?
On the land use development application, there's a variance piece, so there's no variances. This is just the wording in the application. There's no
Oh.
variances that we're looking at here.
Yes, the application letter through our permitting software has some information that's not applicable
Okay,
to this.
okay.
It's so when people get on and apply, they don't have to pick the right form. They can go to the one form and then check the right boxes.
Okay. So it's just the layout of the form. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Nunn before we talk to the applicant? At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant to come forward, please.
Thank you, Travis Taylor, live in Morgan County. We're just talking about the plat, right?
Correct. Just the plat right now.
It's going to be easy to get these
Yeah.
mixed up. I guess, as far as the preliminary plat goes, I mean, this body has seen it before and the commission has seen it before. There's really no deviation. You know, we kind of make provisions in there for minor adjustments as we go through the detailed design on engineering, but we had tried to think about it beforehand, so it's pretty much in compliance. I don't have a problem with the parcel D, you know, it's just a goofy little sliver that we'd like to get rid of and, you know, but I can't see why the city would want it either, so we're fine.
Anybody have any questions for the applicant? We'll probably talk to him again in a few
No.
minutes.
Good.
Thank you. so
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns about this item? Looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Considering that, I will go ahead and move that we give preliminary plat approval to Orchard Bend at North Ogden Phase 1 Townhomes, subject to the Technical Review Committee memo, staff report, engineering report, and then just the city does not want parcel D.
I have a second on that motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
So that's got unanimous approval. Let's go ahead and look at the second part of this particular parcel. This is consideration and action regarding an administrative application. It's the site plan approval for Orchard Bend at North Ogden. The same Phase 1 townhomes, 49 lots. And the presenter tonight is Ryan Nunn.
Thank you again. So the site plan review is for the same parcel for the 49 lots. Again, it's accompanied, it's following the annexation, the development agreement. It is accompanied by this preliminary plat, which was just approved with conditions. Let's see. And so we do recommend it should be subject to the approval of the prelim and as well as the approval of a final plat. In the review of the preliminary or of the site plan, they're meeting all of our city code conditions for the R4 zone as well as the Title 1113. Where in their development agreement they had some specific conditions with some of their building heights, building setbacks, which they're all meeting. Where staff saw has some recommendations for conditions are with the building materials, or that would be a discussion item. Our 11, what section is it? Our building material code does have specific materials, hardy board, stone. It calls out these materials to be used on these multifamily attached dwellings. I wanted to find those here. But having spoken with the applicant, and something for the planning commission to consider is their development agreement does give a broad term for building materials that that the exterior cladding elements should be reviewed at the site plan, and it anticipates to be a combination of masonry, EIFS with a max of 25% and siding. So to allow for alternate sidings that are not specified in our code. And then as well as we added the conditions for their landscaping, they were short just a few required shrubs that need to be met. And then our code for intersections requires street lights. They show one on their site plan. And our city engineer as well recommended that we have streetlights at the intersections. And so staff recommends approval of the site plan with the recommended conditions of it's conditional upon the subdivision, both prelim and final approvals of the TRC memo or engineering memo. With a condition of the updated landscape just to meet those numbers and locations of those light poles. And then we asked the planning commission to discuss that requirement of building materials if we to meet the development agreement or our city code. And I'm happy to answer any questions in regards to this staff report.
So, a question I have, Ryan, is I feel like, we see quite a few of the, these development agreements. We've had lots of these large developments in terms of apartments or townhouses, et cetera. I don't remember seeing one though where the development agreement has this difference of potentially including vinyl. Do we have any background as to why that language you quoted a second ago, I'm assuming is from the development agreement? Is that accurate?
Correct.
Do we know why that was put in this way or what happened here?
From what was shared was that the intent was to allow it to be broad so that alternate materials could be used at the discretion of the developer.
So I know that our code actually requires like hardy board composite stone or brick to replace vinyl siding, correct? But you're saying there's wording in the development agreement that was signed that allows for siding?
Or it's vague,
Yeah.
perhaps?
Yes, I have the development agreement in the packet. And it's on page 4
Mhm.
where it does mention the building materials.
So
And
how beholden are we to the development agreement over city code? I just feel like this is, at least for me, the first time on the commission that we see some like just direct opposition here, or at least that I've noticed. So I don't know.
So the development agreement technically controls because it was part of the land use approval process for the rezone in this situation.
It sounds like.
So
Can I ask one more like super naive question, I guess? I mean, I have theories, but just I'm not exactly sure why. In this particular development agreement, there's several items that you call out in the staff report that they've been allowed variances, changes, differences from code. How do we get to that situation with the development agreement? Like, I guess just, I would like that background information.
So part of so this area that we're talking about today, for example, is all intended to be owner occupied townhomes. So that was part of the development agreement. And so it's this negotiation of finding a project that works and pencils at the right price point that essentially the idea is that they won't all be someone's first home, but in theory, they're in that range they could be.
So the win for the city is that they have to be owner occupied.
Yeah. And there's another section of this development that is rental townhomes and rental apartments. Yeah.
Plans, okay.
So, yeah, so that part hasn't been discussed or we haven't done any action on the rental part.
We're only at
Not before the commission. Yeah.
at phase one.
Okay.
It's actually really encouraging that they're starting with the for sale product, I think. So.
So we shouldn't feel bad about the siding element. It's a negotiated element to get us.
And the hard thing is this, I mean, you could probably ask the architect,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
material now compared to material in the 90s is different, I think, but that's just my experience in building and doing my own stuff at my house. So
I mean, I think the reason cities like is kind of like stucco, right? When someone says stucco or in here in EIFS, right? You know, through the 90s, we saw stucco. And, you know, we'll use stucco but when the word comes up, there's a connotation.
Mhm.
Similarly, that occurs with vinyl siding, but I think cities like, even when they say they like hardy board, there are multiple options. That's the Kleenex of tissues,
Yeah.
you know? So my only caveat with vinyl siding, when, you know, if you do hardy board and you replace it with LP or some other, you know, cement board-ish siding, there is a level of consistency. With vinyl, there is premium vinyl that looks as good or better than some of the sided materials. It's just, it's a broader scope. You know, in the 90s, early 2000s, a west-facing wall with vinyl siding, it gets too hot. It starts to get droopy and saggy. That's not necessarily the case with every vinyl product. So for me to, you know, give a valid opinion, I'm giving a little background on where the vinyl and cities started to codify it. Whereas now vinyl, there are options that are as durable and water resistant and things like that. It just used to be kind of
Great.
warpy.
The wording
I
on the
guess-
siding.
Yeah, my biggest concern is that, you know, we've had other development projects that we have held them to the
Exactly.
standard. And, you know, in fairness, I would want to stick with that, but it sounds like in the development agreement that was signed and agreed to, that it did allow for siding. So I'm not sure that we have.
I'll share just a little. I go through the site plan approval process a lot with my clients. I'm this gentleman in a lot of city planning commission meetings. You know, I go in and I tell my clients, don't give anything up without getting something. So if that gives any background to the negotiation on the development agreements, I just tell them, they ask you to do something and it's not required, don't. And if they ask you to do something that, you know, is required, but you've got a bargaining chip, play that.
Mhm.
So it really is a little bit of horse trading. And to answer the question or the concern of other people that we've held the standards to, they played their cards and they negotiated it. You know, some previous townhomes that we've done, you know, it's been a park. We haven't made everyone do a park. And some have deeded property to the city for the new splash pad, and not everyone has done that. So it really, yeah, it really is a bartering
Yeah, okay.
system.
And this one does have a nice park.
So
Does anybody have any major objections in this particular case, other than the consistency for other developers?
Let's talk, can we talk to the applicant and just get some
I think that's the
perspective here
right idea.
first? Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions for Ryan before we ask the applicant to come forward? Okay. If we could ask you to come back up, Mr. Taylor.
And Commissioner Bailey, I think I need to hire him to go represent us somewhere else. He sounds way better than me.
We've done hundreds of townhomes. We're really good at it. We manage them. We help the builders answer questions, all those things, you know?
You signed a conflict of interest.
So,
It's done.
so I thought that was a great explanation. Part of this trade-off was in your base code, there's no limitation on stucco. It just says stucco. And so that was part of the trade-off is we're limited to 25% stucco with just being able to do the siding. And it is horse trading across the board. You know, this was a very comprehensive plan, and the development agreement contemplated all of these different phases. And so there was just a lot of back and forth as we developed this, and that's where we ended up.
And
Go ahead.
just in terms of the vinyl siding, do you have
Yeah.
do you have a general spec that you use, or is it sort of a placeholder until you figure out the specification?
That's probably a placeholder. And I know that we've gone through over the last 20 years, the rounds with vinyl siding, and we've kind of come to the conclusion. So I don't know the exact spec, but it's the non-warpy
Yeah.
spec.
I mean, I don't think I broke any rules, but I've used a vinyl siding that when it went up, it still wasn't my cup of tea for other aesthetic reasons that are not pertinent, just my personal opinion, that by the time it went up, you wouldn't have known it wasn't a cement board, you know? And it was thicker. It wasn't this paper thin stuff like my in-laws have warpy siding, right? And they had to replace it. So I think it's a tough one, but overall it's a capitalist market. And if someone wants to not buy a townhome because there's vinyl siding, then that's okay. I just don't know how much I have more, to say other than people are out there trying to make money, trying to keep costs down and make money. I don't know if that's the hill I'm going to die on today.
So I do have a question. I mean, in the development agreement, it says that, it should be a combination of the masonry, the EIFS, which I'm assuming is the
Just
stucco type material, right? 25% maximum you mentioned, and siding. But it says this will be agreed upon in the course review process, the site review process, which is essentially what we're doing now. So I'm just curious, I am not a huge fan of us allowing it to be as much siding as currently proposed. We have not allowed that on other developments. This does seem to allow us to have some control with the way the development agreement's worded. So, I mean, would you be open to a proposal where we limit the amount of siding and we push for more masonry? I don't think there's any masonry proposed at the current proposal, correct? I didn't see any.
And I'm just going to add another architect's opinion here. When I've dealt in townhomes and it's a little bit of a race to the bottom, there has been pushback from cities to add the masonry. And while I agree with the sentiment, it ends up, in my opinion, becoming more aesthetically displeasing than siding most times, because they'll get to an outside corner with the brick or the rock and they'll stop. And you just see that edge on the side. And for me, the whole purpose of the stone or brick gets removed. So I know there's a code, but I'd be concerned about, if we're just going by, hey, what do we need to do by adding masonry? I think I guess I want to clarify the conversation. If we want to require it just for the sake of requiring it, that's fine. But I think aesthetically, odds are it's not going to make it better or worse.
Definitely get to that discussion. I just was hoping that he could answer the question and then we'll get to discussion if that's okay.
well, I would guess if you look at these
Yes.
are they objectionable?
I guess the question for me is just, one, we have we have always held developments to a standard of having our city code enforced. You do have a development agreement, which allows you more flexibility. It's hard for me to want to throw in just to say, yeah, make it all siding. As they're presented, I think durability, especially because we're looking at phase one and I'm imagining upcoming phases, there's going to be some uniformity we're looking at. I think durability with siding is always questionable when you drive by these large apartment complexes. Like the first thing you typically see is, you know, sometimes the fading, and perhaps the materials have improved, and we'll get to that discussion piece, but fading, chipping, non-durability, and it doesn't look as good as masonry products, and those are far more durable, especially when we think of multifamily housing. North Ogden in our general plan, a big piece of this is the residents, and, you know, representing residents. That's my role here on the planning commission. We want a beautiful city. So I just have to lean in and push for that. And also, again, we've always required, especially multifamily complexes, to have high standards of development. And I think that that's a precedent the city should continue. Now, granted, we love that they're homeowner occupied, so please know. So I'm just curious if we can maybe, I don't know what my colleagues, obviously we have one that is probably on your team on this issue, but we will debate that out. But I'm just curious, like, if you could see a percentage that you would, maybe we could come to maybe some agreement with on the siding. I know, because right now you're basically, it's, what percentage of siding are you hoping for?
This is the majority of these buildings are siding.
Like 100%.
No, not 100%. I mean, it's got stucco on here.
Okay.
So I guess if we increase the quantity of stucco, that's probably, I mean, the stucco is a little more. And I think we'd be open to increasing the percentage of stucco somewhat from the 25%.
Okay. Yeah, and that's just what I was curious about, is just your perspective on this, and if we could come to something that could make maybe both parties feel a little better, which again, my fellow commissioners may disagree, so.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question on that. I think the siding looks nice and maybe some uniformity of siding, but as Chad mentioned, Commissioner Bailey mentioned, there's different levels of siding, and maybe it's more cost effective at present to have a higher level of siding, but allow it to be all siding, you know, some vertical, some horizontal, something like that. I don't know.
So so I think that's a great point. So are you asking him, like, if there's like a type of siding we could maybe specify that's higher quality? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I'm just wondering. I'm just kind of posing that question to the developer. He had some good answers saying, well, siding's a little bit more expensive, or stucco's a little bit more expensive. So I just kind of posing that question back, and in the spirit of horse trading, I guess, as discussed.
I was hoping that most of the horse trading was over at the development agreement, but I can see that you found maybe a gap there. So I will say, over the last 20 years, we started out being really, really prescriptive in our CC&Rs when we developed single family home lots. And we have one in particular in Harriman where you could drive by right now, and this has been going on for way too long. It's been about 20 years. You can drive by and you could say, oh, that house is from 2006. That house I can see was 2011. And that house, you know, you can see it. And you can see when we started out, it was interesting because we required a minimum of an 8-12 pitch roof. And then it went to 10-12 pitch roof. And it had a certain quantity of stone on there. And then the stone kept shrinking because people didn't want to build in the phases that had those. And the roof, I can't remember when it was, maybe 10 years ago or a little more, the pitch started dropping. And so you would get requests for like a 5-12 pitch or a 4-12 pitch. And now I just went through the parade of homes in Utah County and I'm seeing 12 pitches all over the place again. So it's just really interesting how that comes and goes. And then you'll see, you know, a little bit a rock, and then you'll see maybe it goes to brick. And then for a while it was painted brick, you know, put the brick up and paint it all white. You know, white, like you can't have anything but white in this neighborhood. You can't have anything but white siding, white cabinets, white flooring, white walls, white, you know, it's funny how it comes and goes and is dated. So we try to be somewhat neutral here. The quantity of stone, even with brick, you know, this is no different than we clad our exteriors for the product that we're going to keep for 20, 30, 50 years. we just really don't know how to build them much different than each other. We just do what we do. So I don't know. I guess there is some, these doorways, there are some places where it might make sense to add some masonry in there. But again, we've negotiated this entire development agreement, the entire thing with what we had in mind here. And that's part of why the stucco was represented as it was with 25%. It just fell out of the process. So it was our anticipation to do something like this. Unless they seem objectionable, then we would propose to move forward with what we have.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or?
Any other questions for this applicant? Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
And if I could add, sorry, Ryan over here. Our city code with that building material, I mean, it specifies those hardy boards, brick, stone, but it does leave it also open as well. It does say other materials approved by Planning Commission. So even though it was given as a condition of approval to consider to have those vinyl siding replaced with the specific material, I think in light of the development agreement, trying to be a little more open, and then our code does specify Planning Commission as well can consider it as well.
Okay. Thanks,
That
Brian. That
we're,
helps.
I think we're okay to.
Okay, that helps. Thanks.
I think, I think the only thing I would add, and it might just be our best shot if we, want to leave the door open, is, usually when you're at a planning commission, you present your siding options, and that's what you go with. I would maybe add that we do approve the materials as noted today, and leave freedom or decision as they go and specify the vinyl siding, that if it works for them or if something changes, that they're not pigeonholed in vinyl siding, that it could be replaced with a cementitious siding or masonry at their own discretion. They're committing to the vinyl siding. We could put something in there that gives that if you want, you can go nicer. You're not stuck with vinyl based on the planning commission
Right.
approval.
Or the development agreement.
The likelihood that that would happen, right, based on your earlier comments, is probably low because it's.
People are hungry right now. There's,
Mhm.
especially on the residential side,
What if we asked just to be, because I'm kind of where you're at too.
I guess what I'm saying
What
is
if
I've
we
got vinyl siding options, and I've looked at them and I've gone, why not just get pre-painted LP Smart Side? It's
Yeah.
it's the same cost. We've run into those scenarios. I mean, maybe not LP, but we've had siding options that we were keen on. People bring samples by, and when we got down to it, it was like, it was pros and cons of durability, cost, everything that was influencing that decision more so than vinyl. Does that make sense?
It does, which I guess is why I'm so uncomfortable with this, in light of the fact that all other projects we've ever seen since I've been on commission, we've not allowed vinyl. If the vinyl was specified and we knew it was high quality, durable vinyl, then, because again, I know Ryan's like, well, the development agreement, but the development agreement does allow us some control and negotiation here. Also, what I worry is with code, it does say it's up to the planning commission. And I guess all I'm suggesting is, I don't know that a bunch of very large multi-housing developments covered in vinyl is what is good for North Ogden. And so and if it was a high quality, durable vinyl, those are my thoughts. And because we have no concept of what the vinyl is, the buck does stop with us. And what we define here today could be what continues into the future. So I guess those are my worries.
May I?
Mr. Taylor, please.
I'd be happy to present that to staff if that's a concern, that, it's not, bottom of the barrel vinyl, something like that.
Absolutely, because you just have to understand, again, like, I've driven by so many, and it might be a different decade, and I hear you, I'm not an expert in vinyl construction, but if you drive by apartment complexes covered in vinyl, there's holes and dings, and it just isn't durable, and it looks awful, and we're talking, we put this building on the ground, it's gonna be there for decades. I mean, I think Scott said 100 years we're looking at, I mean, hopefully. But
Yeah.
my point is I just want it to represent our city well, and North Ogden, we do have high standards for beauty, which I think is important. So anyway, I love that idea.
We'd be happy to do that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so approval maybe? Okay.
Well, I'm going to throw out one other, in trying to work with developers here, because, that's part of what we're doing as well, is trying to encourage development. We don't build the city, the developers do. One thing, just in the spirit of flexibility, is I actually have less concern about the materials for the product that is going to be sold as owner occupied. I have a little bit more concern about the product, especially the durability and the uniformity that would be rented. And so just with that comment, as the developers kind of looking at options and talking with the city, I thought I'd kind of throw that out there, because that might help us all in this horse trading to end up with kind of a win-win long-term thing here. Like, people own it, they act a little bit differently. When people rent it, it can be harder to keep up if not governed by a good set of rules for HOA or whatever it is. So just a thought.
And to add, I'm just recalling some of my comments with vendors and whatnot with vinyl siding. And we went down the rabbit hole on, I don't know what it was 25 years ago, but we could basically not find a vinyl siding company they are all offering, some are offering 50-year warranties, but we couldn't find anything with less than, a 10 or 15-year warranty. And still the gamble is, are they going to be in business in 30 years or 50 years to do the replacement? But that was the interesting thing. And it was basically the same discussion, right, with one of my vendors, and they kept coming back with answers. So it's warranted. If it warps, we'll replace it for 20 years, so I don't know if I'm solving anything. I guess I'm just saying, in my experience with the materials, and I think another avenue is in some developments where there's restrictive covenants that require stone, more than half the time, I believe it makes it worse. So if we're pitting one versus the other, an ideal would be, a painted, cement or wood siding, but even those have, maintenance issues. So I just, I don't know. It seems like it seems like they've done their negotiation, and I believe that I wouldn't be choosing that first either, but they've got the numbers. I think our concerns have been voiced, and bare minimum, what is going on here is, Scott, everybody know in those future agreements that they might be thinking, oh man, the last time we went through and there was vinyl, we had an issue. Maybe we won't offer that as a concession. So a question for Scott or anyone who knows what's going on here at the city. Are we opening a door that every development can come in and say vinyl? Is that in the code? Does it already allow it? Are we allowing something that's not allowed?
No, and what's interesting about this one is the word was siding, which was probably an oversight on my side to not read word for word in the development agreement, because that word has a certain connotation and meaning to the developer that might have been different from the city's standpoint of working here for 4 years and seeing the projects that were assembled. And also, this was part of a really complicated multi-parcel annexation and applying a zone and open space discussions and discussions that went down the rabbit hole of water detention and what happens over in that area of the city generally. So I will just take ownership and accountability of the fact that whether the word siding slid in or was purpose, I'm not looking at anybody as having done anything with malice. It's just, it was one of 100 things that we all reviewed. And this is one that I didn't review back against because we were kind of concerned about larger items.
But
For-
but based on the city code, the negotiation here has occurred.
Yeah,
Right.
so yeah,
It's-
that happened as part of the legislative agreement, right? So I think we're probably held to it, short of like the PC having a very different description and definition of citing, or wanting to try to hold us to something really specific, which that's a city attorney thing to question. But otherwise, no. I mean, the only time that this would open us up is in future legislative decisions through annexation or rezones that then allow a development agreement to alter us from our standard code. And our standard code says in R4, you use a cementous siding, a stucco, a brick, some other, hard material.
Yeah.
Or a material approved by so we're not giving up that chip because
you can
we're
still-
doing that today,
Right.
even though we don't have a choice to say no today. In the future, we don't have to approve vinyl siding because today we did.
We're not setting that precedent.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is still up to the planning commission forevermore.
I think Commissioner Green is just saying,
I'm trying to calm her.
well, no, I think
it's
she's,
a
all
good
she's asking
clarification.
for is the quality of the siding. And you asked the developer if he's willing to consider something else.
Yeah, I think that that would just be a great way to move this forward. Obviously, we don't want to cause delays in terms of this meeting, but also obviously your project. The homeowner occupied is wonderful. But I do think, I wonder too, this is phase one, what future phases, like what are we really grappling with this final issue? But I do think the quality could just be a great way to compromise.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not the only member of this commission, so it depends on what we're all thinking. It is a little interesting though that maybe the intention wasn't to actually allow for vinyl in the first place, it sounds like. But here we are.
Yeah.
Looking at the rendition that's proposed
Mhm.
of these, they look beautiful. It looked like the front was mainly hardy board stucco. It looks like most of the vinyl siding is on the sides perhaps
No, I think
here.
all this is vinyl. That's all vinyl.
That looks
Yeah.
like,
They
Is that
make
all?
vinyl siding that's vertical.
Yeah.
like,
So it's all siding.
So the only, you have,
It's like a tongue.
So there's
groove,
about-
yeah.
you only have a little bit.
but when we look at this development agreement as a whole, we have, on several issues, given a lot of leeway, setbacks, things like that, to try to find the right fit for this particular parcel that we have. So I guess I'm comfortable looking at what I'm looking at, which looks very nice, that, I'm comfortable moving ahead with this as proposed. This is just me. I'm open to suggestions. But I am open to also, adding something like if vinyl siding is used as proposed, the quality of siding should be specified.
Or
Something.
I think along those lines, we could just make a recommendation that the siding comes with a 15-year warranty or something like that. If this is one of those ones, if they weren't owner occupied, the maintenance team would be dealing with it, and then when an owner occupies it, the cost comes on them to replace it. So I think our hands are tied, but we could put in the notes that we recommended, vinyl siding with a minimum 15-year.
And that would kind of
Is it-
address the quality of the siding
Is
kind of
15
issue.
years on the low end though? I mean, when we think of housing siding, because you mentioned earlier like 15 to 50. So, and is that the,
Basically, I think they define something more than that, but a hardy siding is gonna look like it's gonna look beat up in 15 years if you haven't repainted it. I'm
Like any house. really.
I'm just leaning on some professional experience here. And, a 50-year warranty sounds great, but who's going to be in business in 15 years? They
Right.
go and register in Delaware as another corporation and the warranty it's the same name. But the warranty, those little tricks,
I
but
mean, any other material is probably following the same
Right.
thing other than stone, right? Commissioner Webb, did you have a comment? I think I cut you off. I'm sorry.
and then.
Sorry, I'm taking myself off mute. Nope, I didn't. I think this is a good discussion and I think that I guess the one comment I was thinking of, and kind of in support of Commissioner Green, is that I'm not reading anything here or seeing anything here where we are beholden to saying, you know, we're giving up our ability to say the level of siding. You know, I think that it sounds like there's probably been some misunderstanding on the part of the developer in the city with this. But if I'm, unless I'm mistaken in the way I'm reading the agreement, I don't see where we have to make a concession on a lower level of siding, you know?
Yeah, and I guess if the developer doesn't mind, I just have one more question for your sake, actually. What would be, Mr. Taylor, thank you. What would be your preference here for our recommendation? Would it be a staff review? Is this warranty? Is there a different term you would use?
I wish,
Easy for you.
I wish I was an expert on the levels of warranty. So I would say if I can come back to staff and make them comfortable, then we'll move ahead with that. If I can't, then they're going to kick it back to you anyway.
Okay.
I think that sounds very reasonable. And then just, do you have any other concerns with the other conditions? I know you had to do like more shrubs, et cetera. Does that all sound okay to you?
I'm not sure why the shrub, I don't think I had any other issues here at all.
Okay, awesome. But yeah, I would be very comfortable if, you know, we could make it more comfortable for you. I know we've put you through a little bit tonight, so I apologize.
Oh, that's.
Doing my job. Okay, thank you.
And Commission, I would, you know, just Googling a little bit in my history, I would say as long as it's not less than 40 gauge siding, you know, 0.4, 0.04, then it seems to be based on the literature I've been Googling here really quick that it'll hold up pretty good. And that vertical board and batten my building inspectors have said when they see it on a house that, and they have to, when they first saw it, they were like, what is that? And they got really close and we're able to be like, oh, this is vinyl, right? So if they're doing the vertical siding, it's a
And-
different look and product.
And I will just add one silly little snippet. So I built my home in the white phase. And that was just in 2018. And I am blown away at the quality, the options, everything that is available in 2025 than what is even available in 2018. I couldn't find one window supplier that had ever done a window on the subfloor, you know, floor to ceiling windows.
Really?
And the same window suppliers, as I've made jokes with them over the years since then, they've all basically put their foot in their mouth and said, we've just never seen it. Right. And just when we were looking for tile and everything, we had Wayfair, we had Home Depot, things like that. The range of materials, this is one area where capitalism is really working. It's not a race to the bottom. It's almost the opposite. There are so many options where I'm really not seeing the cheesy things that I grew up seeing. And I don't know if that helps anyone, but I'm really just blown away
Yeah.
of what we have to choose from. You would never, you could look and look and look online and still never get all of the options that are out there.
And I think that's why if we can, I mean, and again, if you guys dissent, that's fine. We don't have to always be unanimous, but I think a motion with this idea that just a quick staff review, hopefully less painful for the developer, less painful for everybody involved. Does everyone feel like that could be a good
But the
direction
staff
to go?
has the capability to determine the quality.
Yeah, looks like they can do a.
And if they can't, then it'll pop up to us again.
No, I would like to make a motion, but before a second is if there's further discussion or you want to add or subtract something, maybe let me know. I'm just trying to summarize and incorporate so we can move this along.
Yeah.
So I would make a motion that we approve the site plan, subject to conditions in the staff report, with the exception of the bullet item under conditions of approval that talk about building renderings must be updated to show hardy board composite stone or brick replacing the vinyl siding. So that should be removed, that condition of approval, and replaced with, if vinyl siding is used as proposed, the quality of the siding is specified and approved by staff.
I'm game with that.
Well, and I think.
You want to add?
And then I would add that the renderings are followed because the vertical siding is is gonna, in my opinion, if we stick with the renderings, then the mix of vertical to horizontal will also have an impact. And
Yes,
so,
because they look beautiful, and that's the only
Yeah.
reason I
Mhm.
think we are in concurrence with that. So, thank you, John. In addition to that, to add that the renderings of the proposed townhouses with the siding configuration be followed.
Yeah.
For this phase.
And I think that motion hopefully just helps bridge our general plan, bridges our code, bridges what we've done before with this body in terms of approval. So I just want to say, I think that I love that we went through, I know a process, but I think it's a good bridge. and
We had to have a
hopefully-
discussion.
And
And
yeah,
I-
hopefully good for
and
the
I think-
developer as well.
I think I would just like to add one thing. If this was, and I'm not attacking anybody, if this was some of the previous townhomes that we've seen, I would have a little bit more heartburn, but we do have vinyl, but they're probably the most, I mean, it's just my opinion, they're probably the most attractive that we've seen,
Agree.
you know, so it's, if they weren't as lovely, I would probably be more opposed, but they are lovely. I do think there is that sense of, to put words in the applicant's mouth, of some semblance of timelessness, in the sense that those could have been built 10 years ago. They could be built in 10 years. They could be built tomorrow. It's a little bit looser in terms of, it's not the pink brick from 1998. So
Yeah.
just so staff
excellent
knows that, or for all you guys know, that I would share the concerns more if they didn't look the way they did.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Chad, on that. And I would say that another thing that really boded well for this developer is his candor. His candor about horse trading, his candor about, the timelessness of these versus seeing something that, I mean, everybody knows the Ivory home that was built in, and Ivory's a great developer. I'm not criticizing Ivory, but it's easy to see an Ivory home that was built in, in the 90s. It's just, it is. So thank you to the developer, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So there is a motion on the table, but we could have further discussion if you guys want to add anything to it, or.
I'm either quiet or I blab, and I'll be quiet.
That's okay. I actually appreciated the input that you just had.
That's good.
To-
Second?
So,
I will second that motion.
right, so we have a motion and a second.
John has that clearly.
We
I
have,
was gonna say, we just need a second.
Give other people-
so we have a motion and a second, so let's go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Bailey,
Yes.
Commissioner Neighbor,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Gardner.
Yes.
Okay, so,
You need to vote.
oh, and I say yes as well. Thanks. So it is, it's unanimous with that one addition to the conditions of approval. And sir, I appreciate you working with the city so diligently and under this development agreement. It's been really a pleasure.
I will begrudgingly admit that even though I don't always get what I want, and it doesn't always turn out better, but a lot of cases it does turn out better. I have to begrudgingly admit it, even though the process can be long and painful. And I'll echo what was said before. Your staff has been great to work with.
Yeah, that's
So,
good to hear.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is just an open public comment. Is there anybody online, John, that might have a comment on anything that we didn't cover tonight? Did cover tonight.
We do have a raised hand from Chris Pulver.
Councilman Pulver, how are you tonight?
Good. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So is it kind of an off the wall, not question, but maybe mostly comment. I know we had talked about the east side against Washington as an option. I know, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. We were trying to do this originally. And I didn't know, obviously, all of the plats that we've seen so far are not joined together. So that means that that's still that issue on the along Washington. Just wondered if there was any updates or anything that said that they were working on it, or that was, you know, something that's just not going to happen, and those lots will have to be figured out later. Is there any comments to that?
Yeah, my understanding is that they haven't further worked with that, and there are still the unincorporated lots that are on the east side of this project. And so far, the only preliminary plat we've seen is the everything hovering on the west side around 150 north. I'm sorry, 150 east.
Roger that. Just, yeah, because there was some talk about, can't remember who the owner was, but they were saying that they'd love to do something, blah, blah, blah. And I just wondered if that has even been talked about, but okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Any other remarks by the planning commissioners?
I'd just like to thank Commissioner Green for voicing her concerns, even if it wasn't as easy as it can be sometimes. So thanks for the concern. I think you represented yourself well in North Ogden well, so I just wanted to add something there.
Thank you, and I
Second.
appreciate our ability to get your wisdom on things, and I appreciate that. I just, yeah, it's always hard, and you don't want to make, you know, anyone feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, just trying to make sure I just learned through public policy, when you move it just even a little, you just keep moving it, and it's hard to know where to stop. So.
And your question about precedent was a good one too. You know, that's what I love about this commission, but also the reason that there are 7 of us from all different backgrounds is we all bring a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we can always not always agree with stuff, but we always respect each other. And, you know, it's not a personal thing. That's what our duty is to bring those different perspectives to the table. So appreciate you.
I could see Commissioner Green's school administrator skills coming through in the way she drew a line and tactfully negotiated. I feel like I was talking to my dad, or I feel like I was in the principal's office being, you know, so for whatever that's
And
worth.
I'm the 4th grader.
Commissioner Bailey, hold on. I got to get him on the ropes first. Give me a second here. Then we'll go to being nice.
So I also want to comment on Scott's bit too. We took responsibility. It wasn't an overlook. It just happens sometimes, right?
Yeah. No,
So that takes a professional to share that, Scott. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And the one thing that I would also add is, just based on my time in front of other planning commissions, what transpired today is very low key.
yes. Okay, good. Good.
It is, I mean, that is, the gentlemen that were here, they're going, oh, that was kind of a pain, but can you believe how nice these guys are? And can you believe how great things are going? You know, I went to one planning commission meeting. I won't name the city, but we had we didn't have a development agreement. We had gone through full site plan approval. We met every rule. And the planning commission was, you know, on the microphone, they looked at the planner and they said, so there's nothing we can get out of this guy.
Gosh.
We can't get anything. You know, it was a little retail lot, right? And they said it out loud. So I'm just sharing a little perspective that Commissioner Green, I think, you know, you apologize for making it a thing to the gentleman that was here. You did not make it a thing, particularly he's done this before. And if you have sat in front of other commissions, this is just a well-organized, almost very casual sort of situation. We're not seeing people 5, 6, 7 times. And in other cities, I am there 5, 6, 7 times, even after following the rules. So, you know,
Well,
and I think that's a compliment to staff mostly. They're getting it here, everything in order. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, really where developers choose to develop is a comparative thing. I think, you know, Chad, you mentioning what it's like in other cities, you know, our reputation as far as people wanting to develop here or thinking it's easier to develop in another city is a factor, you know. So,
If it starts with west, it's really difficult. I'll just say that. If the city starts with west, it's hard.
I've got several in.
Any report from the Community and Economic Development Director, Mr. Hess?
Well, one, thank you, Commissioner Neighbor, for saying that. That's really kind. And then the other is, Commissioner Green, your comment was so good and I didn't have a specific response to it, but the question was, do these things happen often? Or are these sorts of things that go against the code, do they happen often? And that's actually like, that's the point of a development agreement, is to create a little sandbox of but fors, or these are the exceptions to the rules that we're creating. And it's specifically for that horse trading. You know, we might collect open space or a trailhead or some betterment or a different road configuration or storm drainage or any number of public improvements that we get out of those differences. And then what we've given up is that in this case, these townhomes in several locations will be slightly closer to each other than perhaps another project in an R4 location will be. So it happens all the time, and the
Just
Yeah, go ahead.
for background information, is that just like the mayor and you and like the city manager, or who develops, like who's on the city end of
It's
this?
the council. So it's the city council. So they are the ones who adopt development agreements. And you can think of when we did our administrative, legislative, and quasi judicial decision making.
Yeah.
This is a legislative decision where they are creating the law. So what they're essentially doing is they're going, you have Title 11 zoning code plus a development agreement, appendix development agreement for West States essentially. And so what we do is, the way to read them is the development agreement first. This is all the stuff that you must do and you're held to. And if it isn't specified in here, then you default to Title 11. And these, you know, we're getting better over time at development agreements, I would say, because we have some weird ones that are old. You know, we've got a 10-year-old development agreement we're still operating under right now that puts the administrative site plan approvals in the city council's hands. And that's for a project that is still ongoing in the city. And we no longer do that. You know, we're better about putting the projects in front of the right bodies to make those decisions. But it was one that, had we known that this was going to be a specific talking point when Planning Commission considered West State's annexation and application of a zone, we would have brought it up. And it's kind of like the nature of having a proposed project versus you get all the way to the finish line and here is the project in front of the Planning Commission. So it happens, and I will be more careful to read all the words in the future. But it is really, it's one of several projects. And then to Commissioner Bailey's point, yeah, I've been on this side of watching planning commissions go completely rogue and say things like, I don't really like that color red. I want a different color red. And then the planning commission as an administrative body, horse trading with an applicant over things that they have no business. And I've like said, you're going to get sued. And then saying, well, we don't really care, you know, sue us then. And so this was it was a great discussion, but it was like light on them from the standpoint of, this is the hill I'm going to die on, and you have to change this to a hardy cementous siding, you know, and we could have said that. And then it's up to them to appeal that decision, say we've administered the law incorrectly, that they've been applied. But that happens far more often than I would say mistakes in a development agreement and or like the planning commission accepting, okay, well, we missed something this time, so we'll wait for next time. Like that's more rare.
yeah.
And Commissioner Green planted a seed that I think will follow them in their selection. You know,
Yeah.
There's a chance it won't influence, but it was the best bet
Yeah.
to influence it. So
Because we have more phases coming.
yeah.
Yeah, of rental.
Well, my guess is, and Commissioner Bailey made this point, they probably won't actually use vinyl. Because by the time you go to that vertical and try and find a distributor, the only stuff that's available is the premium, and LP Smart Side might be cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's a great product, in my opinion. So.
But I think the way we worded it, it doesn't preclude them from using something other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one bit of nuance too is in a couple of years, when the next energy code comes out, it will almost remove this material as an actual option. So right now with the energy code, it's the 2021 energy code that Utah adopted. They did it in 2023, but about every 3 years there's a new adoption. And so in 2023, they adopted the 2021 Utah energy code, but they also made every city municipality in the state of Utah, they were all on different energy codes and different versions of the building code. So I would go to one city and get a 2012 energy code, one and get a 2015. So the legislature brought everyone onto the same residential building code, plumbing code, and energy code. The one caveat with that, it was really hard to get everyone to comply. So the 2021 energy code, it requires external insulation to make a building more energy efficient. Or you can be 10% or 5% greater than the 2012 energy code. But they're going to drop that in the next one. And my point is once you clad a building with insulation, the means to attach siding to that building makes it very difficult to do vinyl. But on the flip side, it solves the biggest problem with vinyl because you can't put it right against the insulation. You need a little bit of air gap. And so in a couple of years, this really shouldn't be a problem because there will be an air gap. And vinyl's number one issue is it gets too hot on the south and west side.
Mhm.
But having a little ventilation gap that keeps buildings more energy efficient kind of solves the vinyl problem, if that makes sense.
Interesting.
So even if we did kick open the door, it's like 2 years until we get the new one where they say, you're done. No 5% better than 2012. You meet the energy code today.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. The last thing that I'll say is that we approved today from the planning side, and we do on commercial projects and multifamily projects, a walkthrough of their landscaping, but the 12 townhomes constructed at Village at Prominence Point on the island parcel are done, approved, completely finished. The landscaping around the clubhouse is nearly done. It's almost done. So we almost have that portion of that project complete from a city standpoint and for sale. So we did that walkthrough today and they look really good. They fit in that project very well and they'll make a good for sale product.
Yeah. And I think back to the horse trading, in all reality, the city council, I think they did a good job in getting these to be owner occupied. I think that's the real victory here is just getting some more people in North Ogden that, hey, they're going to love North Ogden and they're going to replace that warped vinyl siding when it happens.
Skin in the game, man.
And there was a little park too.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Okay, any remarks from the city manager and city attorney?
Nope, I've made all my fun ones, other than you'll see an email from Katie about the party next week. You are invited, don't forget that. So RSVP at the pool, bring your family and have some fun.
Thank you.
I have one question. Do we have to go to the pool to get our free passes or is there a way to do that via email?
If you email Justin, then he'll have them ready there and they can just pick them up.
Just send me an email and
Can a spouse pick them up?
yeah, send me an email and I'll copy you in a reply with Justin Rasmussen and that'll be easier for you.
You know,
Or D
person.
Rasmussen at North Ogden City.
You gotta pick them up, man.
All right.
I move that we adjourn.
I second.